Enjoy our podcast? Go to surfingthetsunami.com to discover an amazing wisdom and wellness platform designed to take ancient ideas down to street level with practical tools and takeaways delivered by some of the world's greatest thinkers, authors, and innovators. Sync up with a growing community of like-minded people from around the world on a journey to self-awareness, mindfulness, and fulfilling their dreams. The Wisdom Feed Plus membership is a perfect place to take your next steps on your personalized success path to a happier and healthier life. You can't stop the waves, but you can learn how to surf. Go to surfingthetsunami.com today.
If I've gotten sensitized to something, I know I've got a trigger about it. There's a kind of a big red button sitting there in my psychology, and it's easy for other people to bump into it. Self-knowledge is really useful. Know what your triggers are.
Welcome back to the StreetSmart Wisdom Podcast. I am Steve Stein, the founder of Better Listen and Wisdom Feed Plus. For 4 decades, my mission has been to find and publish the most inspirational and evidence-based thinkers in the world. We've sold more than 1 million downloads of wellness audiobooks over the years, so you can rest assured if it is on the StreetSmart Wisdom Podcast or Wisdom Feed Plus, it is legit and carefully vetted. Welcome. My name is Steve Stein, and I'm the host of the StreetSmart Wisdom Podcast. And today we have a very special guest. Dr. Rick Hanson is the author of Buddha's Brain and numerous best-selling books. And today we have a unique topic. It's a new word it's new to me: sensitization and neuroplasticity. Welcome, Rick. It's an honor and a pleasure to have you on as our guest today.
That's great, Steve. And greetings to everybody else here live, and greetings to those who down the road will either watch this or hear it or both in a recorded form. And it's a pleasure to be here. And I hope to be street smart. I want to get at what's smart on the street, right? In the street of daily life, including dealing with other people back and forth.
Right. There's emotional intelligence, but we try to take things down to, taking ancient ideas to street level, so practical ideas. And before we started, you introduced me to a word, sensitization, still can't say it, sensitization and neuroplasticity. How do those two connect?
Yeah. Well, getting sensitized to something is a really common process. It's fundamental. For example, let's say there's someone in your life who is kind of a nag or a critic. And the first 5 times they hassle you or correct you or get on your case or find fault, initially you're sort of surprised, or maybe you don't quite get it, but around the 5th time, you've kind of had it up to here, and you're getting more and more prickly about it. So then the next time they do it, you might react pretty strongly to it. That's an example of getting sensitized. Another simple example that I like is, imagine that you're dragging your fingernails across the back of your hand. The first 10 times you do it, not a big deal at all. The first 100 times, it's starting to get a little pink. The 1,000th time your hand approaches, you want to pull it away. You've gotten sensitized to that negative input. Another kind of sensitization involves what therapists call transference. We transfer into the present things we learned in the past. So maybe, like I did, you grew up with very well-meaning but quite controlling parents, especially my mother. And a lot of that control was unnecessary and came with a kind of alarm and criticism that could be fairly intense. Okay, fast forward. I've been married 41 years, and I swear to you, and I've been deep in the weeds with mental health for 40 years at least, if not 50. And so still, if my wife starts telling me to do something, especially with a critical tone, and I think, it's not that important, it's not that big a deal, or sometimes she'll tell me to do something while I'm already doing it. That's one of my favorites. Well, that whole history with my mother, to which I became sensitized, gets transferred into the present. All right. And then I'll maybe overreact to my wife, let's say. These are examples of sensitization. And at bottom, they all involve change in the nervous system, whose fancy term is neuroplasticity. Plasticity is the capacity of a system to be changed. Okay? The brain is designed to be changed by our experiences, especially by negative ones, especially by negative experiences that happen during childhood, including our adolescence, and especially negative experiences during childhood involving other people. We get sensitized by all that, and then we carry it over into the present. So that's the fundamental, natural, well-intended by evolution, thank you, Mother Nature, programming in our own brains. The question then becomes, and I think this is where you're going, okay, what can we do about it?
So what can we do about it? But a couple of things kind of come to mind. So not so much with the skin, but I'm more familiar with the idea of desensitization. So after you hear, take out the garbage the 115th time, it's like you almost don't hear it anymore.
That's interesting, yeah.
And that's related too, I think. And
yeah, it could be that. I mean, the brain is complicated. It can walk and chew gum at the same time, that's for sure. We habituate, we desensitize to certain things. We stop hearing the fan in the back of the room, the refrigerator hum disappears. But I would say that negative inputs, we don't tend to desensitize that much to. We might maybe a little bit grow numb, or we just develop a habit of tuning them out. But if we experience them, they tend to have impact. And because the brain has it's called a negativity bias, which makes it like Velcro for bad experiences, but Teflon for good ones. And so I think that's kind of true, tuning out, but we're vulnerable. We're vulnerable here. Yeah.
Context.
Yeah. So what to do? I think so. One, it's helpful to realize if you've gotten sensitized to something. And I think when we look out in, let's say, America over the last year or two, people can become very intense about certain topics. They've gotten sensitized to those topics. And I'm not saying those topics are not important. I'm just saying, maybe we add a turbocharger. We turn up the heat, we turn up the volume, and that makes it actually harder to come together as a nation to solve our problems together. So that would be another area where sensitization, can happen. And often it's easier to see sensitization in other people. They've gotten irritated, they've gotten revved up, they're getting all turbocharged around something. But really, we do it too.
And does it have to do over time? It gets deeper, the sensitization, and you may react to something that someone says now, but it's really the whole history that's driving the trigger.
Yeah, that's right. It's a little bit like each single episode in which your partner is being, fill in the blank, a little dismissive, or your boss, or your sibling, or your aging parent, or your adult kid, fill in the blank, someone who matters to you, right? You can't just blow them off. They matter to you. Any single time, that they're snippy or snarky, or they kind of cut you off, or they don't communicate with respect, or they seem indifferent, you give them a gift, they don't thank you. Just little things. Each little thing is it's like a match head for a wooden match. Imagine a wooden match head that gets flicked into the corner of the living room. All right. But over time, that pile of matches grows. And then something happens. It could be the proverbial straw breaking the camel's back, whatever it is. It's that spark that gets flicked into the corner of the room and ignites all that fuel that's been accumulating in the shadows. There, boom. And suddenly people are yelling at each other. So, the smart move, of course, is to deal with the sensitization early on as much as you can. So preventing it in the first place, and paying attention to little things. Some of them you can just let them go by as long as you're not adding that match to the corner of the room. You really are letting it go on by. You shrug. They're having a bad day. You let it go on by. But if you notice that you're increasingly just being a little preoccupied with all this, and you feel hurt or irritated or vengeful with that other person, then it's probably good maybe to talk about it if you possibly can. So right there are two suggestions. One, try to prevent things from building up in the first place by letting them go. Yeah, not a big deal. Or if they really are kind of a big deal, trying to deal with them before they become a huge, explosive, permanently altering your relationship with a person, kind of big deal.
And that ties into the concept of mindfulness. You can't control what happens, but you can take a breath or take a beat, and you can control how you respond to it. And
yeah, and then on the basis of that, sometimes you can influence what's going to happen next by speaking from your heart and saying what you hope will be different, maybe with that other person. I mean, we're not giving up our capacity to influence other people in, an appropriate way. So we can, people work out stuff, especially in the street. At the street level, people talk about stuff, right? There's a place for that. But yeah, being mindful of what's arising, so you're aware of yourself. You're aware of those little background hurts and irritations before they build up to become too big. And also with mindfulness, as you know very well, being able to have a kind of spaciousness, a kind of room to breathe around whatever you're experiencing is really, really helpful. Yeah.
And then connect again. So there's a negative bias that happens with the sensitization, and negative things sensitize and even deeper. Now, what does that have to do with neuroplasticity?
Oh, well, what enables sensitization is the fact that the nervous system can be changed by our experiences. And there are certain circuits in the brain, let's say, that are very easily changed. We are affected much more by negative interactions with other people than by positive ones, for example. So the circuitry that processes negative interactions is much more changeable. It's much more sensitive. It's easily affected. And there are other examples of that in the brain. The one exception broadly is around physical addictions, like people who, use, let's say, some highly addictive drug like cocaine, nicotine, a few times, very quickly they can become sensitized to it. So they really want more and so forth. But in general, it's really interesting. people, if you're irritable or irritated, pretty quickly you tend to acquire a mood of irritation. On the other hand, if you're grateful, it usually takes a lot of experiences of gratitude, which are positive, to develop a mood of gratitude, right? So, I think it's just, so here we are. We have a brain, 600 million years of evolution have given us this brain. And here we are. It's an incredible organ. I mean, it's amazing what it can do. And it's got some features that developed in the Stone Age and even all the way back to Jurassic Park that it really behooves us to be aware of and manage, right? And so how I am about it, is that if I've gotten sensitized to something, I know I've got a trigger about it. There's a kind of a big red button sitting there in my psychology, and it's easy for other people to bump into it. Self-knowledge is really useful. Know what your triggers are. Second, when you're getting triggered, like you said, bring mindfulness to it, try to slow it down, have compassion for yourself, don't blame yourself. It's normal to become sensitized. It's normal to have a negativity bias. It's normal to develop a big red button. It's not your fault, but now it is your responsibility for what you do with it. Okay, so that's the second thing. Kind of the experience is occurring in the moment. Try to be mindful of it and try to slow things down so you can act skillfully. That's really useful. And then long term, it is really possible to pull weeds in the garden of the mind. It is. Long term, I want to get at that. I want to become less sensitized. I want to be more at peace deep down inside.
Pull weeds in the garden of the mind.
Yeah.
That's a clear.
Yeah.
I haven't heard that one before.
That's right. We really can heal. We really can release. Usually, we can definitely heal from and release most of, at least, of even traumatic material. Eventually, with skillful practice, some help, and occasionally a little luck. Okay. A very, very, very simple, effective tool, maybe we'll finish on this point for people to be aware of, is what I call linking. It's a standard method. You see it in the spiritual traditions. You see it in coaching and clinical psychology as well. It's a simple process of knowing what the negative material is. So let's say a prickliness and reactivity to being criticized, like I described in myself. All right. Or it could be a very quick sense of rapid anxiety related to your health. Maybe you've had a health issue, you're on the other side of it, but every ache, every pain in your body sends you into alarm again, fear of worsening. Either one. So now I'm going to call that the negative material. Okay? The way linking works, and it's neurological in its machinery, is that you can be aware of two things at the same time. You're aware of the negative material. Let's say I'm kind of aware of my prickliness about being bossed around and criticized and, some associations to interactions with my mom that are 60 years old. And then in the present moment and in the foreground of your mind, you have a big experience of some kind of matched psychological medicine for that experience. Like, let's say, feeling a lot of worth or feeling that people love you, which are matched to old experiences of being criticized and unworthy, inadequate, ashamed. Instead, the opposite of that would be experiences that are genuine, of being valued, accepted, appreciated with other people, including maybe the person who's criticizing you. And if you're aware of both of those at the same time, neurons that fire together, wire together. If you are aware of these at the same time, the positive starts wiring, literally, in your brain together with the negative to gradually soothe it, ease it, and with repetition, even potentially replace it. That's linking. In effect, you're using flowers in the garden of your mind to uproot and replace the weeds. And if you do that again and again and again, you really can feel different in days, certainly in months.
And strengthening that connection is part of the neuroplasticity part of it. And I love when you say it, it's a machine. It's like there's biology. It's not just some far out concept. I love that.
Yeah. That's great. Yeah. Really down to earth. That's great, Steve. You get it. It's super.
That's great. And I'm sure our listeners will appreciate that. Yeah. And before we end this segment, how can people find more about you and your work?
Oh, thanks. Just search my name, Rick Hanson, S-O-N, easy. rickhanson.net is my website. Almost everything I offer is for free, just tons of freely offered great resources. And we've got some online, very well-crafted programs that are very well priced and, range from fairly brief things to, a year-long Foundations of Wellbeing kind of program for a few $100s at the most. And so they can do that, and I welcome them. We practice for ourselves, but we also practice for others. And the more people who engage resources like you offer, Steve, or I offer, the more of us that are doing this, it's going to help the world in all kinds of ways.
Amen. No, that's beautiful. That's our raison d'etre. Make the world a little bit better than it was a little bit. As we keep unfolding this. Okay, so that brings us to the close of this segment. My name is Steve Stein. I'm the host of the StreetSmart Wisdom Podcast, and that was an excellent segment, Rick, and thanks so much.
Oh, thank you, Steve, and greetings to everyone here.
If you like the StreetSmart Wisdom Podcast, we invite you to become a Wisdom Feed Plus member. You'll have direct and on-demand access to some of the most compelling and relevant thinkers in the world. And it's all highly curated and designed to help you be your best you. Change your mind, change your life. If you're like the rest of us in this insane world filled with stress and uncertainty, Wisdom Feed Plus can help you smile more and stress less. That's exactly why our team has created Wisdom Feed Plus, a wonderful community of inspired individuals in search of health, wellness, and a life of abundance. When you become a member, you don't just get access to a broad array of meditations, yoga, qigong, and live events. You become part of an inner movement and a growing community of like-minded people along the Wisdom Feed Plus success path. Your personalized journey to a peaceful and satisfied life. Go to surfingthetsunami.com to get started.